Thank you, Chief Secretary Dr. Shwaya. Members of the Fourth Estate Cabinet received the weekly update on the National Cholera Outbreak Response, which was presented by the Minister of Health and Child Care, Honorable Dr. Douglas Mombeshora. The nation is advised that during the period 14 to 20 February 2024, 1,025 new suspected cholera cases were reported, reflecting a reduction from the 1,286 cases reported the previous week. Districts that have not yet reported cholera cases are Bulilima, Insiza, Mangwe, Cholocho, Lupane, Nkai, and Shurugwi. Government is distributing the resources required in order to assist patients across the country. The nation is also informed that as a result of strong interventions through the Ministry of Health and Child Care, cholera cases are now on the decline in districts including in Chipinge, Mutare, Gutu, Wange, Chitungwiza, and Uzumba Maramba Pungwe districts. The robust vaccination campaign is yielding visible results in the non-cholera hotspots, whilst screening for cholera and other infectious diseases is ongoing at all points of entry. Furthermore, the Africa Center for Disease Control is procuring water treatment chemicals and branded tents for oral rehydration points. The center has also supported the training of 500 community health workers in Harare and Chitungwiza, and will also support the training of various community health workers in case management and surveillance. The nation is further advised that the government of Zimbabwe has procured 100,000 rapid diagnostic kits, and other resources have also been availed for the procurement of 6.3 million vaccines in order to cover additional hotspots. Cabinet wishes to reiterate that communities should continue to adhere to disease prevention strategies and get vaccinated at their nearest health centers. In addition, some health centers, especially in Harare, will be open during weekends and also after business hours. The public is also advised to continue to use safe, clean water. Cabinet received and approved the Heritage-Based Education 2024 to 2030, which was presented by the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, Honorable Professor Emon Muruira, who is also the chairperson of the Cabinet Committee on Human Capital Development, Skills Application and Employment Creation. The nation is informed that the Heritage-Based Education 2024 to 2030 curriculum framework is expected to transform the education system in order to produce citizens with relevant skills, applied knowledge, values, and dispositions that are key to national development, beginning with the communities they serve. The primary and secondary education system is being designed to mold productive learners who will cherish and practice Zimbabwean philosophical orientation of Ubuntu. The proposed curriculum will embrace heritage as a basis for learning and infusing technology, and shall be implemented from ECD up to upper secondary school level. The pathways whose learning areas are provided for in the framework are science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, visual and performing arts, humanities, especially the history of Zimbabwe, technical or vocational education and training, and commercials. Cabinet wishes to inform the nation that the heritage-based education will be anchored on the following pillars. A. Programs or learning areas in terms of infrastructure. B. Staffing infrastructure. C. Physical and digital infrastructure. D. Legal and regulatory infrastructure. And E. Financial infrastructure. Pertinent issues in the learning programs infrastructure include the rationalization of learning areas and strengthening the school-based continuous assessment at infant level, which is ECDA to grade 2. Learning areas are being reduced from the previous 11 to 6. The reduction will also apply to junior level, which is grade 3 to 7. At secondary school level, the core and compulsory learning areas are being reduced from 7 to 5, and an inclusive and integrated approach will be used to cater for learners with special needs, including through the provision of assistive devices. It is envisaged that the identification of pathways will be implemented early whilst enrolling learners for secondary education in order to cater for differences in talent and ability. Learners at secondary school level will study at least 3 electives from the following categories: the sciences, languages, humanities, commercials, technical and vocational, and physical education and arts. The review of the assessment modalities and tools will entail the rationalization of CALA, which is the continuous assessment learning area. Activities now denoted as school-based projects, which emphasize on the learner being observed whilst carrying out the practical aspect at school. The future of the country will increasingly be shaped by science and technology. Hence, the bias in the education system to foster critical thinking, innovation, creativity, problem solving, and programming. As the learners enroll for secondary level, they are then categorized according to their areas of proficiency. Good and well-trained teachers are the cornerstone of any education system. Thus, central to the delivery of quality learning is the staffing infrastructure. This shall include capacitation of teachers, since the heritage-based curriculum requires a different approach. Focus will be placed on in-service teacher training and coaching, whilst using locally available resources. The inquiry-based training and teaching approaches and methods pillar aims to transform teaching practices from the traditional raw learning, lecture and drill, to more learner-centered approaches, where pupils have the space to develop their creativity, to develop and express their ideas, and to collaborate with one another, and also at the same time to learn by doing, thereby experience holistic development. Personnel qualified in technical and vocational programs will be considered for employment as teachers in relevant learning areas. This is expected to increase the absorption of post-O-level students in tertiary education institutions in the country and form the foundation of startups for the enterprising learners. Suitable and appropriate physical and digital infrastructure will be provided, and closely related will be the provision of adequate and appropriate infrastructure, including classrooms, workshops, laboratories, internet connectivity, technical equipment, and teachers' houses in order to achieve the intended goals. The workshops and laboratories shall be tailor-made according to the unique geographical needs and locally available resources, which learners can observe, manipulate, and explore during their learning processes. Access to electricity, either from the national grid or renewable sources of energy, will be a priority for every school. This is in order to bridge the gap between the rural and urban schools. The focus will be more on learning by doing. In order to actualize the aims of our education system, a review of the legal and regulations infrastructure will be undertaken, and this shall include the alignment of the heritage-based education curriculum with Section 13 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which states that the state and all institutions and agencies of government at every level must endeavor to facilitate rapid and equitable development. Thus, policies and regulations will ensure that no place or individual is left behind as the curriculum is implemented. There will also be continuous harmonization of the primary and secondary education curriculum with the higher education curriculum, with the view of fulfilling the mantra of leaving no one and no place behind. The nation is informed that government will ensure that the provision of conducive teaching and learning infrastructure in rural areas, small-scale commercial, old and new resettlement areas is provided, and a need analysis will also be conducted in all areas in order to guide the implementation matrix. This has got a bearing and a view in order to ensure a sustained transformation. The history of Zimbabwe will become a compulsory subject on the curriculum. National shrines and cultural heritage sites will be included throughout the curriculum, and the national pledge will be included throughout the curriculum and have a special place in order to entrench patriotism, loyalty, and respect, and also to inculcate a proper mindset. Products of the education system should know that Zimbabwe comes first. The examination framework will be reviewed in order to cater for not just the academically gifted learners, but also for the technical and vocational oriented learners. The national e-learning strategy will be enhanced, and the diasporans who are also part of the program will continuously support the program. Some of the areas that this program has already commenced is in Chipinge, Chive, and Beitbridge districts. Cabinet considered and approved the compendium for the first 100-day cycle projects for the year 2024, which was presented by the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs in the Office of the President and Cabinet, Honorable Love Mo Matuke. The nation is informed that the first 100-day cycle is running from the 5th of February 2024 to the 15th of May 2024. The cycle covers 182 projects. The nation is informed that the projects were selected according to their potential contributions to the aspirations of Vision 2030 and focusing primarily on the improvements of the livelihoods of citizens in all communities. The projects are distributed according to the 14 thematic areas of the National Development Strategy, which is now in its second segment, which ends in the year 2025. And due to the critical role played by infrastructure in accelerating socio economic development and growth. The highest number of projects comes under the infrastructure and utilities pillar of the National Development Strategy 1, with 41 projects. The projects include in areas such as construction and rehabilitation of roads, classrooms, and clinics, as the Second Republic delivers equitable and quality services that will transform livelihoods across the country. Some of the projects are replicated in more than one province. The nation is further advised that in order to strengthen the internal monitoring by the respective ministries, a regular tracking schedule will be used, while progress as at day 50 will be publicized as per practice. Site visits will be undertaken to selected projects across the country. Cabinet considered and approved the memorandum on the update on the preparations of the 2024 Independence Anniversary and the Children's Party celebrations, which was presented by the Honorable Vice President, Honorable KCD Mohadi, as the chairperson of the Cabinet Committee on State Occasions and National Monuments. The nation is informed that the 2024 Independence Anniversary and the Children's Party celebrations will be held in Manicaland Province. The nation is further informed that Murambinda B Secondary School will host the 2024 Independence Anniversary celebrations, and the Murambinda A Primary School will host the Children's Party, whilst Murambinda B Primary School will host the Independence Anniversary Gala. The nation is informed that the teams competing for the President's Independence Trophy will be Highlanders and Dynamos football clubs, and that going forward, a team from the hosting province should compete with a team from the previous hosting province, with Manica Diamonds Football Club from Manicaland Province playing Simba Bora Football Club from Mashonaland Central Province after the Children's Party. Cabinet received the report on His Excellency the President's attendance at the funeral of the late President of the Republic of Namibia, Dr. Haig Geingob, as presented by the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, Honorable Emon Murira, as the Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. The nation is informed that His Excellency the President, Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa, and the First Lady, Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa, visited Namibia from the 24th to the 25th of February 2024 to attend the state funeral of the late third President of the Republic of Namibia, Dr. Geingob, who passed away on the 4th of February 2024. In his tribute, His Excellency the President, Comrade Idi Mnangagwa, paid homage to the contributions made by the late President in the development of his country, Namibia, in Southern Africa. The President expressed his heartfelt condolences to the people of the Republic of Namibia and the Geingob family for the untimely demise of the late President. He highlighted that the late President was one of the heads of state who stood by Zimbabwe in the fight against sanctions that were imposed by some Western countries at both regional and international level. The President also indicated that the late President was a visionary statesman, a revolutionary and an ardent teacher, a philosopher, a pragmatic leader, and a son of the soil, who advocated for economic development, Pan-Africanism, African freedom and dignity, and also equality, solidarity and national sovereignty, and urged the young generation to emulate the late President Geingob. I thank you.
Thank you very much for us to improve our understanding of what is going on. First of all, I want to say that a country or a nation is whatever you see in a nation across the whole world is a result of what those people know and what they can do, which basically means knowledge and skill, which are then embodied in something that we call education. Because education is what we teach our people to know and then to be able to do things. It therefore means education is central to the development of any country. It therefore means whatever we do, we have to look at our curriculum and see whether it is fit for purpose. Our intention, for example, is to become an upper middle income economy, and because we want to become an upper middle income economy, this is an intention. But what is the means that you use to reach there? Basically, is to look at our education system. So this new curriculum, first of all, you ask why 2024 to 2030? Normally, we have got what we call curriculum review cycles that normally take 5-6 years, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on what we want. But you know we want to go to 2030, so we are going to 2030. There is no what I can call physics behind it. It's basically these are cycles that we follow in curriculum review. But also, and I will also want at some point maybe Honorable Minister Moyo to add on what I would have said, if there is anything to add. We are replacing the name called color by school-based continuous assessment. And by the term school-based continuous assessment, it basically means our learning is more of students learning at school. And I think what we have also done is to reduce the number of learning areas in order to focus. So that's for Torisani. Or the other question by privilege is what is heritage-based education? I want to start by saying this heritage-based education is a prelude towards heritage-based education 5.0, which is being pursued at higher and tertiary education. But by heritage-based education, we are basically meaning education that is focused on using the best knowledge that you can ever get, but focused on the environment of your country, or on the natural endowments of your country and the people of that country. For example, I will just give you an example. Would you study Chaminuka, or do you want to study, first of all, Mussolini? I think you are likely to benefit more by studying Chaminuka, who was living in your environment. And aid to Mussolini. There's nothing bad in knowing other areas, but first of all yourself. So heritage-based education, if you are doing, for example, foliar chemistry, let me just give you an example of foliar chemistry, which means leaf chemistry. Would you study a maple tree, or would you study a mchakata tree? I think I would rather study a mchakata tree, which is close by, but it's still the same chemistry, using the same principle. So heritage-based education is a very strong philosophical, leaning towards the relevance to the environment that way you live. Would you study a lion or a polar bear? I think I would rather study a lion because it is around. A polar bear, it can be an elective if I want to. So, but these are just examples of trying to say I want to study Zimbabwe's minerals, but using the same scientific principles, isn't it? Because scientific principles are universal, but their applications are specific. So, Zimbabwe's minerals, Zimbabwe's soils, Zimbabwe's climate, Zimbabwe's water, Zimbabwe's plants, but you must remember, when you are studying Zimbabwe's plants, you are studying them using the same scientific principles as people in the tundra would study the tundra system, as people in the tropical rainforest would study the tropical rainforest, as people in the desert would study the desert. But the issue basically is, at the end of the day, you are learning for what? You are learning to fulfill the needs of your people, which is water from the environment where you are, which is food from the environment where you are, which is transport from the environment where you are, which is health from the environment where you are, which is the people from the environment where you are, which is connection from the environment where you are. So that's your heritage. Your heritage is your power. Your heritage is your home. For example, I would give an example just to clarify and make it very clear. Would you make wine from mafura, or would you make wine from grapes? I think you are more successful making wine from mafura because, one, you don't need to water them. Two, they are here because they've succeeded to fight against the diseases in this land. When you are doing it with grapes, it means you first of all, you have to look like Italy, or you have to simulate an Italian environment. So I would rather then make wine from mafura, and then if I want Italian wine, then we exchange. That's the basis of trade. So heritage-based education is such a powerful philosophy when it comes to relevant examples that make a difference in people's lives. I think, because sometimes people, when we say heritage, they think it's history. No, heritage is a scientific term which means what do you have? For example, what do we have in this country in terms of trees? We have kumsasa mnondo. What else do we have in terms of minerals? We have all sorts of minerals, over 4,000 minerals in this country. We can name them. So when you study, would you study things that are removed from your environment? No, you don't study things that are removed from your environment because it's your environment from which you profit and from which you are able to produce goods and services that you can trade with other countries. Therefore, heritage-based education is a very heavy education in terms of philosophy. So heritage is a philosophy of saying home first, but universal principles in terms of science, in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, but focusing on your home. So I hope in a very long shot, I have been able to explain what heritage is and what heritage-based education is. Relevant education that is relevant to your country, that is relevant to your people, that is relevant to the environment that you are in, because education is the means towards the production of goods and services, because you can't build if you don't know how to build, isn't it? So you build with the materials that are within your country. I would rather study clay that is in Zimbabwe than clay that is imaginary. Therefore, I can be able to make pots and tiles using clay that is in Zimbabwe. Using the clay that is in Zimbabwe is your heritage. Now, Privilege went on further, I think, or is it Tabataba, to ask about the budget. I just want to, I will talk in terms of framework, not in terms of real figures. Because if I talk about real figures, that's not policy. Let me say, in order to implement an education change or an education revolution, first of all is the intention of the education that you have to look at. What is the intention of the education? It's involved within the vision of His Excellency the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, as he represents us, which is the vision to become an upper middle income economy that is modernized and industrialized. When that has been said, you then have to develop capabilities to reach that vision. But the capabilities can be reached with an appropriate education. So, what are the pillars which we can use to support an appropriate education, which is the heritage-based education? Number one, the programs. What are you studying first? What is it that you are studying? What are you learning? That's number one. That's when people say, I do chemistry, I do physics, I do this. What are you learning? How are you learning? Which are the programs? So we then have to ask, what are the learning areas that we are learning? That's number one, or A, if you want in Roman, or whatever numerals that you want to use. But I say one, it is the programs. What are you studying? Commercials? Humanities? This, but what are you actually studying? What are the programs? Number one. Number two, who is teaching these programs? What What do they learn? How are you capacitating the teachers so that they can teach? So that's being number 2. Number 3, what is the infrastructure that makes things possible? For example, we are holding a press conference here because the infrastructure is appropriate for it. We have put in the microphones, we put in the seats, we put in. So in terms of school, what are the laboratory infrastructure? What is the digital infrastructure in terms of our learning infrastructure? What is the electricity infrastructure? Where are the teachers living? Which is basically the physical and the digital environment. That's number 3. Number 4, we also say, what is the legal basis of your education? What legal instruments are supporting your education? That's when we then have to look at the Education Act, we look at the regulation that the ministry is using or the ministries are using in order to ask whether they are supporting our intention, which is number 4. Then number 5, we come to Tapatapa's issue because you just asked one of those things, which is money. After all has been said and done, you have got your programs, you have got your people, which is your workforce, you have got your physical and digital infrastructure, you have got your legal infrastructure. What is the budgeting? What is the financial infrastructure that you use to support this? So we have 5. So Tapatapa have asked the 5th one, but the 5th one is part of a collective of 5 things that we are looking at. And this is looked at from time to time, and Treasury and the Chief Finance Minister is the President. He then looks into this infrastructure to make sure that it supports the legal reform, it supports the physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure, it supports the staffing or the workforce, it supports the programs. So basically I believe that this gives an overview of the systemic issues that we are looking at when it comes to our education. So our education is moving from rote learning, which is A-A-E-O-U, without thinking deeper. So now we are saying, after you have learned physics, then what do you do? What do you apply it for? So we are going for skill, we are going for knowledge with the intention to produce goods and services. Because it's goods and services that make us be able to put on these clothes and talk like this. Because education at the end of the day must result in human dignity. Human dignity is when people can find food when they want it, can find water when they want it, can find health when they want it, can find transport when they want it. So all this must come from school. So no more issues of imaginary things. We study and make things and services. I hope this explains the revolution that we are making within the education system to make it more relevant. We are not going to change the physics formula, but we are saying this physics formula must be used to produce something, not just to say, I know MC squared, and then what? If you say, I know MC squared, therefore I shall deploy a satellite which will respond to the MC squared law so that it goes around the Earth. Now that's physics. I know biology, and this biology is going to make me be able to make mushrooms, and also to make vegetables, and also to produce more animals so that my people can have more food. Then that biology will make sense. I will hope I am explaining the system that we are looking at. Honorable Chair, I think I've taken my beat. I don't know whether Honorable Moyo has something to add to this thing.
The chairperson of the Cabinet Subcommittee for the contribution. I want to add a few. Firstly, to the question asked by Olisani, how to review color system. What I would say is the new revised curriculum is intended to rationalize color to a very large extent. Color was introduced at a time when we were in a pandemic in form of COVID-19. So it was introduced around 2020. And in the majority of cases, the teachers had not been trained to effectively manage color. And our observations were that learners were doing more than 27 colors at grade 6 and grade 7. So that had to be reviewed. And the new revised curriculum has reduced the number of learning areas per subject from around 8 to 1, which means we are going to offer 6 learning areas to primary students and 5 compulsory learning areas from Form 1 up to Form 4. So which means that at grade 7, a student is only going to do 6 school-based projects. And we have removed the word color completely and replaced it with a school-based project. So they will do a maximum of 6 instead of 27, a minimum of 27 that they used to do. And one major point is that the revised curriculum is very important in the sense that we want to inculcate critical thinking skills in our students, to embrace problem-solving issues. Our students should be able to innovate, should identify societal problems benefiting society, affecting society. Then they carry out their research or their project based on the problem that is faced by the community. And in the process, they are able to come up with the goods and services that we need. Our emphasis is to ensure that we are going to vocationalize education. By the time a learner finishes O-level, he or she must be able to provide goods and services that are needed. One should be able to have skills of making vehicles, skills of writing some plans, housing plans, and any living out of that. That is the main motive of this revised curriculum. And on the question asked by Tapata, capacitation of teachers. It is our aim to ensure that before we roll out this curriculum, it becomes compulsory for every teacher to go through in-service training as a form of human capital development. We are able to fulfill and also to realize some milestones because the teachers, they also need to go for in-service training, and in the process that will ensure that the curriculum will be appreciated by teachers. And our emphasis is that we want those teachers to embrace the new ways of teaching. The pedagogy and andragogy of teaching has to improve in line with the new curriculum, so that they need to have scientific way of ensuring that the learners receive some skills, competencies that are in line with what we expect, in line with the national vision of Dr. E. D. Nangagwa, of National Development Strategy 1, that will be realized through this new curriculum. I submit for adoption.
Cabinet level, whereby we are giving a policy go ahead to say, yes, we have seen your framework, now go ahead and implement. Okay? So, I talked about 5 things which are the pillars of this system. 1, the program. 2, the staff or the workforce. 3, the digital and physical infrastructure. 4, the legal instrument. 5, the money. So all elements have been discussed. I wouldn't want to be drawn into the idea of the cost of the data because we will lose the grain. The grain is by saying number 5, we are going to look at the money. It means if we have a digital infrastructure that is good, the money has to be made available, which is number 5. So it's a very good question. So for any e-learning to take place, there are 3 things that have to happen. 3. 1 is the connectivity. But connectivity talks about the transmission of the data, which is the data itself, which has to be looked at, and it's a policy issue. But we are already recognizing that we need connectivity on number 3, and on number 5, we need money for that connectivity, which is the data infrastructure, digital infrastructure, which has to be supported by money. 2, we need power. And in the paper that we have presented, power would be in two forms. Either the national grid or standalone renewable energy. But number 3, you need the content, which means content development, which then it gets carried by the data, which goes to the student. And we need gadgets, which is the gadget infrastructure. So all this thing is what government is saying we'll look at. I am trying to avoid, Honorable Chair, to get into a detailed discussion about cost of data, because that's not what we discussed in cabinet. What we discussed in cabinet is that all of this will need a good digital infrastructure, and all of this would need money. So all those provisions have been discussed. It means government will be able to look into all these issues to make these 5 things that we've talked about possible, because they need, all of these things need financial support. I just thought, Bruce, I have answered you, but at the same time, I think I am trying to bring the question to exactly what we discussed in cabinet. Otherwise, we'll start talking about ICT policy, which we didn't discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Internet in the box. That means that we are going to have a server in various schools, especially in rural areas. I'm sure you're aware that the number of disparities between urban and rural schools. Rural schools are disadvantaged in terms of internet connectivity, and also because in some areas you may not even have the internet. So internet in a box means a server will be deployed to an administration block. Then any learner within a radius of 100 to 200 meters can access the learning materials uploaded by the teacher. So there is not going to be any cost for data because of the use of this server. The other issue is we have also engaged diasporians, Zimbabwean patriots who are in the US, who are in New Zealand. One of the guys we have already signed an MOU with them, where we are going to roll out laptops, tablets from ECD right up to Form 4. But our main emphasis will be rural areas. So we're going to roll out starting with Chipinge, Bedbridge, Chile, until the entire country has been covered, and we are going to implement that. Then to the question asked by Privilege on whether we are going to envisage a situation where the learners are going to learn in their mother language. When you are an ECD teacher, you can't teach learners in English or in French. You have to resort to mother language so that they are able to understand what you are teaching them. But we said at secondary level, we have 5 compulsory subjects. And one of the compulsory subjects is history and heritage studies. And another compulsory subject is an indigenous language, which may be Shona, Ndebele, Tonga, Zulu, Nambia, you name it. So those indigenous languages will be taught in either Shona or Ndebele. So because it will be compulsory. Then for the last question asked by Chidaba, on whether we are going to reduce these colors, whether it's going to be, when are we going to implement it? This is immediate effect. We will reduce starting from 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, President Idi Mnangagwa, that there is a plan to ensure that we leave no one and no place behind in terms of the national e-learning strategy. And at the same time, to appreciate also the deliberate investment climate created by the new dispensation in order to allow many other new ICT players into the industry in order also to support e-learning strategy. But at the same time, to perhaps remind you that the Smart Zimbabwe Master Plan is already started to be rolled out, and also the Smart Education Pillar, which is one of the critical pillars, also recognizes the importance of bridging the rural-urban divide by providing the requisite ICT infrastructure through a whole-of-government approach, whereby the Ministry of Energy and Power Development provides the energy either from the grid or by utilizing renewable sources of power. At the same time, to underline the importance of the national e-learning strategy in terms of the Zitco factory, which is now producing laptops across the country, but also the utilization of the Universal Services Fund to cater for those students, especially in the rural areas, by utilizing the Universal Services Fund resources by deploying various ICT equipment through ZANET. So all these are policy interventions. The National Broadband Plan clearly articulates, identifies areas that are privileged and areas that are not connected, including the schools. So we have a detailed plan which is very clear about how many schools do we have, how many schools have not been computerized, and the model that we are implementing. I'm sure you are aware that the president has been donating, handing over a lot of laptops across the country, especially focusing primarily on rural area schools. And we also have the new ICT policy, which takes care of connecting the unconnected people. So all this is integrated through a whole-of-government approach, where all institutions, ministries, departments, and agencies have been directed to ensure that we ensure that each and every citizen of Zimbabwe is part of the digital highway. But we have another question from New Zealand to the Minister of Health in terms of your points of entry.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Herbert, for your questions. First, let me say we have not received any positive cases, especially at our borders. In the border along Mozambique and Zimbabwe, the northeastern borders, where there's quite a lot of movement across. That's where a few cases have been picked up. I must say, in Mozambique, cholera is endemic, that is throughout the year. Whereas here we've had epidemics, and this is the second epidemic that you are hearing. But because of the screening, people know that if you are going to cross into Zimbabwe, you are going to be tested. Those who have got symptoms don't move. Let me also say, diarrhea due to cholera is very profuse, watery, and can be quite severe. So if anyone has already symptoms of cholera, usually they don't travel because you mess yourself up. And we actually collect these two for testing. Therefore, it means most people who have got the diarrhea already don't move. But then we will continue screening. When we are screening, we are using symptoms to say, do you have symptoms of diarrhea with vomiting? In Zimbabwe, we are just taking any diarrhea, any water diarrhea is cholera until proven otherwise. That is until tested. That's why our cases are so many, but those that have tested positive are not as many. But we will continue screening despite the having no positive cases coming across our borders. Coming to the cases which are declining, there are various reasons that we attribute to the declining cases. First, we are talking of the interventions in terms of health education to the community, engagement with the traditional leaders, engagement with church leaders. We have also engaged the schools in the rural areas to teach the students on basic hygiene issues. We think these are also part of reasons why the cases are declining. Secondly, it's also because of the interventions that we have done to treat every water point, especially in urban areas, as contaminated, which means we are treating all potable water for drinking and cooking before at the point of collection. That also reduces the number of cases. And then thirdly, the vaccine that we've started, the areas where we started with our vaccines, as I said last time, the vaccines are in phases. If the vaccines come, we are distributing them to the various points. Those areas where they received vaccines early, we have actually seen a dramatic decrease in the cases. Now we are trying to investigate cases which are coming from the areas that were vaccinated, whether these patients who are coming have been vaccinated or they have not been vaccinated, and if not, what are the reasons? Because in most of our rural districts, it's 100% uptake. All the vaccines that we said they have been taken up. We are still having challenges in Harare, where we are still seeing cases, and the uptake of the vaccine is at about 81% at the moment. But we think it is because vaccination is taking part during working hours. And also City of Harare was saying they don't work during weekends. What we've done is to say we are missing those who go to work. I'm sure most of you leave early in the morning before the clinics are open. By the time you get home, the clinics are closed. Weekends, the clinics are closed. It means you have not been vaccinated. I'm sure if I ask you how many of you have been vaccinated, probably less than 10%. So we are now, for sustainability, we say we have to maintain all these interventions, and it also involves all government departments. That's where we talk of a whole of government approach. Firstly, we have to maintain the education in the community. We have to maintain the education in the schools, and that involves the Ministry of Education. We also have to move to the issue of provision of safe water and sanitation in the urban areas, and that involves the Ministry of Local Government through its local authorities. We also have to involve Ministry of Finance, like we have mentioned, that we need to vaccinate all hotspots. We need to vaccinate everyone in the area, and that requires financial resources, and we need cooperation from the Treasury. Therefore, if everything is said and done, and we cooperate as all the ministries that I've talked about, it means it will be sustainable. The long term of it means provide provision of proper water and sanitation conditions, which is long term. But I think government is already put in place measures to make sure that water reticulation is corrected in urban areas, sewerage collection is connected in the urban areas. And we are also moving to the rural areas with the presidential goal drilling to make sure by 2025, every village, 35,000 villages, should have clean water to drink. So in the long term, we think if we start now cooperating with all ministries involved, it means the decline will continue. In fact, we are not just looking at a decline and end at a decline, but we are looking at eradication of cholera. And this eradication is not only targeted locally in Zimbabwe, but in the whole Southern region, in Africa as a whole. I think a week ago, we were in Ethiopia, Addis, where Africa CDC, Centers for Disease Control, was actually discussing the issue of eradicating cholera in the region, in the African region. So I think if we are working together as neighbors, because diseases don't know borders, I think we'll be able to sustain the disease and eventually eradicate cholera. Thank you.
Honorable.